I'm Chris Judge, Principal Technical Officer for PGRO, and I'm going to be explaining to you the 2025 descriptive list and going through the highlights and extra information about the different varieties. So there's 3 post-descriptive lists to talk about for 2025, so we'll be going over the winter bean list, the spring bean list, and the combining pea list. So major highlights is that we have 1 new winter bean variety, 4 new spring bean varieties, 9 new varieties in peas, which is 1 marrowfat, 1 green pea, and 7 yellow peas. We're also adding some virus information onto the list, which hasn't been present previously. So the sites for 2025 are very similar to previous years. We're working with the same farmers and growing areas as we have done in previous seasons, trying to get a real spread across the different growing areas to make sure we're covering a range of different soil types. So the descriptive lists are based on a 5-year data set. So by adding the 2024 season data means that we're dropping off the 2019 data and covering information from 2020 onwards. So moving on to the winter beans, I'll go over the status of different things on the list and then show you some information about them. So with 5 years of data in the data set, we have Vesper, Vincent, Bumble, Norton, Bonneville and Tundra. LG Arctic and Ninja now have 4 years of data, and the new addition to the list only has 3 years of data and is Miro by Sonova. So here's a graph of the winter beans showing yield in the columns and the dots showing maturity on a 1 to 9 scale, where the varieties closer to 9 will be more mature earlier in the season. So I'll just highlight up Miro as the new variety, and the notable fact about that is that it's quite early with a maturity score of a 7, and this means that you're sort of comparing it to the other early varieties such as Ninja with an 8, and it's higher yielding than Ninja. In fact, all of the varieties with a higher yield than it have a lower maturity. Top of the winter bean list is Vincent and Vesper, which have the same yield as each other, though Vincent has a better Danny Moody rating. As said, Vincent's Danny Moody rating is a 7, and I've highlighted that up alongside other Danny Moody scores for all the winter beans on the screen now. Miro, the new variety, has a less good Danny Moody rating of a 3, so if growing that, you'll need to pay attention to your fungicide regime. For chocolate spot, there are lots of the varieties have the same score of a 5, but both Vesper and Miro have a 7. For protein levels in winter beans, a lot of them are in the sort of the 26% range, though Ninja stands out as having the highest protein. So this is then what the winter bean DL looks like. So there's all the categories I just discussed there, as well as extra information such as on standing ability, straw length, and info on thousand seed weight. And it also shows the year everything's first listed and the number of years of information that are in the matrix. Moving on to the spring beans. So we've got several varieties that have got 5 years of data in the data set, including Lynx, LG Raptor, LG Viper, Futura, Genius, and LG Stego. With 4 years of data, there is Synergy, Navara, and LG Hawk. And then we've got 4 new varieties, Nautilus, LG Eagle, Ketu, and Loki. In the sort of the Black Highland tick beans, there is Maris Bead, which currently has 3 years of data. This is because it's a very old and established variety. We move things into something called limited trialling, where we only get data for them 3 years in 5, so that we're updating them with fresh new information, but not expanding the trial series unnecessarily, including them in every year when they're well established. So here we've got the yield for the spring bean varieties in blue and dots on the screen showing maturity. And you can see that Nautilus and LG Eagle are the highest yielding ones with a yield of 110. So I'll just quickly highlight up the new varieties, which is Nautilus and LG Eagle, but also Ketu and Loki. Ketu is an LVC variety, which means low visine convisine, which is sort of a digestibility trait which makes them more suitable for certain animal diets. So alongside Ketu, there is also Synergy that is LVC, which also has the same yield as Ketu, both being joint second, and also Futura as an LVC option. For bean rust, LG Viper has the highest rating of a 7 and is a very good variety for disease resistance. The new variety Loki and last year's variety Navara also have a rating as a 6, being better than average for rust. For downy mildew, LG Viper is also very impressive with a rating of 8. Maris Bead has a rating of 7, and Lynx has a rating of 6. Lynx has historically had very good downy mildew rating, but its number has been decreasing in recent years, most likely due to it being grown on such a large area of the country and the races of downy mildew starting to adapt to it. So that's the spring bean DL, and on the list itself there's other traits not covered, such as straw length, 1,000 seed weight, and protein, etc. Onto the peas, and starting with the yellow and pink peas. And with the yellow peas in particular, we've got lots of new options this year. There's been a lot of focus and effort on breeding new yellow peas and testing them in the UK. So with 5 years of data, we have Chameleon and LG Ajax. With 4 years, there's Batis, KWS Flam, Orchestra and Manager. With 3 years, there's Concerto, and then the new varieties, KWS Bram, Marla, Nos Blondie, Capta, Belair, LG Corvette and Bonham. In the pink varieties, there's the pink variety Flamingo, which has now got 4 years of data. The reason that Concerto only has 3 years of data, even though it's not a new variety, is because as part of doing a trial series like this, some varieties sometimes have issues with seed quality or issues with the crop in general, which means that they have to skip a year of data. So Orchestra and Concerto haven't had new data this year, but remain on the list, just with less data in the matrix than they've had previously. But the descriptive list statistics is all set up to cope with some varieties having 3 years, some having 4 years, some having 5 years, to statistically adjust things to make sure all the comparisons are valid and fair. For the green peas, we've got Greenway, Mika, Cactus, Butterfly, KWS Gotham and Carrington with 5 years of data, Shazam, Blue Time and Carioca with only 4, and Reacher, LG Aviator, Prophet and Daytona with only 3, and also 3 years of data for the new variety Pangea. So as I said about the yellow peas, Reacher and LG Aviator skipped new data for this year due to issues with the seed, and things like Prophet and Daytona are in a very similar situation to Maris Bead, where they only have 3 years of data out of 5 because they're older, well-established varieties. For the maple peas, we have Mantara and Rose, again in that 3-year limited trialling situation. For the marrowfats, we have Sakura, Octavia, Takayama at 5 years, Akuma and Vision at 4, and a new marrowfat as well called Midori with 3 years of data. So this is them all put together. I'm going to be splitting them up into just the yellows and the non-yellows in a minute to make things easier to pass. But there's an overall broad view of the yield differences between all of the different types. Now we've got all the new ones highlighted, and you can really see they've got lots of new material towards the top end of the yellows, and that wins in both the greens and the marrowfats. The new variety is at the top of the category. Really good new material available there. So focusing in on just the yellows, again here we're showing yield in the yellow bars and downy mildew rating on a 1 to 9 scale in the black dots. And then with highlighting up the new varieties, you can see that the new variety KWS Bram is tied for the top of the list with Concerto, with new varieties Marla and Nos Blondie also performing very well with a very strong yield. Captain Belair are only just behind them, and in general we've got lots of new good material at the top end of the yellow list. LG Corvette is notable for having the highest downy mildew rating of an 8, though there are also other varieties with a rating of a 7 for downy mildew. Moving on to powdery mildew, 2 of the new varieties, Marla and Belair, have got high resistance reported for powdery mildew, increasing the number of options for powdery mildew resistance, which was previously just Manager and LG Ajax, and also these new resistant lines are also higher yielding than the established ones that had powdery mildew resistance. Protein in yellow peas is interesting. In general, there is a trend that the lower yielding ones are the ones with higher protein, and the new variety Capture by Agravista really stands out as not fitting that pattern and having a notably high protein. Moving on to the greens, maples and marrowfats, colour-coded with the greens being greens, the maples being an orangey brown, and the marrowfats being more of a teal. So again, score-wise, we've got yield in the bars and downy mildew score on a 1 to 9 scale as the dots. Highlighting up the new varieties, as I said earlier, Pangaea goes in at the top of the green varieties, and Midori goes in as the highest yielding marrowfat. For downy mildew rating, Carrington and Blue Time have a rating of an 8, and both maple peas have really good downy mildew ratings with an 8 and a 9. In the marrowfats, the best downy mildew rating is Vision with a rating of 7. For powdery mildew resistance in the peas, you have high resistance in the new variety Pangaea, joining Reacher and LG Aviator as resistant options within the greens for powdery mildew. With protein in the peas, there's quite a spread across them, but it's particularly notable that the maple peas have higher protein. Also new to the 2025 list is that we're adding purported resistances to different viruses. So highlighted up here, we've got 3 varieties that the breeder has said that there's information on them having virus resistance. This is something that we've heard is also coming forward in other varieties in the future, and this will be a feature of the list moving forwards. So KWS Bram has purported resistance to BYMV. For Belair, it's pea seed-borne mosaic virus, and for Reacher in the greens, it's both pea seed-borne mosaic virus and pea nation mosaic virus. And then on the rest of the combining PDL, there's other information that I've not covered within this talk on things like straw length and standing ability, and also the exact data on vowels and grain weight and the year things were first listed. So to get access to the descriptive list, if you're watching this on YouTube or on social media, there should be a link in the description to the PGRO website where you can not only access the descriptive list, but a variety of other useful information for growing peas and beans. If you're already on the website watching this, there should be an option to the side to download the full list to peruse at your leisure. The list was also printed in the winter issue of Pulse magazine. You can also listen to an episode of Inside the Pod about the descriptive list, where myself and some of the plant breeders discuss the 2025 list. And for other information and other inquiries, you can always get in touch with us at PGRO or check if there's information that answers your query on the PGRO website. Thank you very much for listening.